Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Training Tips with Ward. In the video clips that follow, I'm going to be discussing two of the utility level exercises. First, the signal exercise, and secondly, the moving stand. First, I want to mention how I train these exercises. Normally, I train them with 3 reps, or 3 times over, one after the other after the other. The first time is always a setup that I feel the dog can handle, and I'll help him. It'll be easy for him. The second rep is normally a little more difficult, and the third rep is simply the exercise as we know it. As in other videos that I have produced, I'm going to be dealing with each of these exercises in terms of what I consider the critical elements. So let's get busy and take a look, first of all, at the signal exercise. In terms of the signal exercise, the critical elements are 1. Heeling, 2. The halt, 3. The actual combination of a hand signal with the halt, 4. The signals themselves, and finally the recall and the finish. First, the heeling pattern. The heeling pattern is simply scored in the same manner that any other heeling patterns are scored. For example, at the novice level, where we are pointed if, for example, we have crowding, we have wides, we have slow sits, we have wide about turns, and so on. So remember that when heeling, you're going to be scored the same way that you would be scored if you were simply doing a regular novice heeling pattern. The next consideration, or the next critical element, is the halt. And on the halt, there are 2 things to consider. The footwork that one uses moving into the halt, and secondly, the hand signal. In considering the footwork for the before the hand signal, the question always comes up, for example, how many steps or how quickly do we stop on any halt? I like to think it's a 3-step process with a close at the end. And by that I mean, if you count your footsteps, they go 1, 2, 3, and close. So to demonstrate that, it would be forward, 1, 2, 3, close. Looking at it from the other direction, it would be like this. Forward, 1, 2, 3, close. And that's your halt. That should be your halt in any exercise, whether it's a heeling pattern or whether you have your dog beside you getting ready for the moving stand. Your halt, the steps on your halt, need to be coordinated with the actual hand signal that you're going to be giving to your dog. So what you really want is you want the hand signal to occur as you're hitting your number 3 step. So it would look like this. Forward, 1, 2, 3. In giving your hand signal, one needs to be careful how the hand signal is moved either over top or to the side of the dog. If, for example, your dog is forging slightly and you bring a hand signal down from the side of his muzzle, it's very likely that the dog will throw its rear end in as the head turns out. In my own case, I like to make the hand signal slightly over top of the dog's head. That way I find that the body position maintains. In other words, it doesn't flip from side to side. In addition, the hand signal should be clear, not flashed, not any fancy sort of waves. I try to make it as clear, as simple, and as steady as possible. In other words, I would do it something like this. In terms of the actual hand signals at a distance that are being given to the dog, I like to think of keeping them smooth, deliberate, not rushed, not fancy, and not flashy. My hand signals generally go something like this. Often, people tend to forget the speed of the hand signals that they're giving. And frequently, you'll see people that will almost literally flash these signals. For example, something like this. Or my point is that it's to your advantage and to your dog's advantage if you are deliberate, steady with the hand signals. When you leave the dog, again, your hand signal should not be flashed. It should be steady. It should be deliberate. For example, like this. I'm going to demonstrate this up to the point of the halt by the dog. And I'm going to demonstrate it coming toward you. I'll also demonstrate it going from side to side along the wall so you can get a better idea. Now, one of the things that I like to do is try as best I can to make sure that the dog's body remains in position. Now, I like to make sure that I'm stopping in heel position with my dog. That can and will be scored if the dog is in a forged position or a lag position. And the way I check it when I'm training is I look at the position of my dog's feet. Normally, I like the feet to be just about even with the balls of my feet. Now, if the dog moves and you're in training, how should you go about fixing that? If a foot moves, I normally simply return to the dog and I will take and replace the foot to where it was and say, stay. Looking at that from the side, it's something like this. 1, 2, 3. When training the exercise, I normally use, for one of the reps that I do, I use a flexi and I use it behind my back. And when I give my hand signal, I similarly at the same time press on the brake on the flexi and give a slight tug behind my back. It looks like this. So I'm going to show you very quickly and in a very restricted space here, how I would train this exercise 3 times over. And I won't get as far away as I would like, but at least I can describe it for you, and I think you'll get the picture. First time, first rep would be like this. Very close. I would perhaps go this far away from the dog, and I would, with him standing still, move forward and give him a treat. Move back and give him the first signal. Then treat that signal. Move back. Give him the next signal and mark it. And I should have marked the previous one, but I neglected to. Yes. Forward. With 2 hands, give a treat. Back. And with 2 hands, yes. Let's do that again. First signal, then mark and treat. Yes. Walk forward and treat. Return to the previous position on my part. Second part, second signal. Yes. Walk forward. Give a treat. Yes. 2 hands and a treat. Now, that's the first time through, for the first rep. I then in the next rep would not offer a treat each time. Instead, I turn around on the spot. And the reason for that is I want the dog to realize that between each of these signals, something is going to happen. In the first rep, it was forward with a treat. And in the second rep, I'm simply going to turn around. So the dog learns to wait until I do something before he moves on to the next signal, or the next part of the signal exercise, the next change. To demonstrate that, I turn around, then give the next signal. I turn around again and give the next signal. I turn around again and give the recall signal. Okay, by doing that, I'm getting the dog to wait until the next signal is given. In other words, I insert something in between each of the signals. And then finally, I get rid of the flexi. Here, come on, attaboy. That's my guy. And do the last signal as a normal. Get back. Do the last signal, the last rep, I should say, do it as I normally would. Now remember, the distance here is really not enough. Normally I would do the first rep about 10 feet away, the second rep 20 feet away, perhaps between 15 and 20, and the third rep would be full length of the ring for distance. Signals are deliberate and return to position at the side. Moving on to the moving stand exercise, the critical elements are signal. It must be smooth, not flashy, distinct. And second, the actual halt by the dog. You want the dog to halt immediately. You don't want him sort of stopping and taking a few steps. You want that halt to occur, and you want him to hold his position. In training, I like to say, stand your dog twice. In other words, the judge's comment or request for you to do something, I say it twice because the dogs are very smart. They pick up on these words, stand your dog, and they very quickly will learn to stop on the judge's command and not yours. So in order to prove that, I always say, stand your dog, stand your dog. This is during training, of course. And then after the second one, I will stand my dog. The second critical element is the dog holding position. If the dog fails to hold position, you want to immediately go out to the dog. This is if you're training. Or if you have someone training with you, ask them to do the following. Go out to the dog, and if the foot has moved, ask them to take the foot, gently move it back to where it was, and say, stay. The fourth critical element is the actual examination of the dog. Now, the way I like to do it is to have the dog stand there. And again, if I am training by myself, I would move out to the dog and I would do this. Have the dog stand and hold the position as I go over him for the examination. Every time my hand touches the dog, I say the word stay. Now this is assuming the dog understands that command. For example, I would be going over the dog and saying stay, stay, stay. The reason that I do that is because through association, the dog learns that the touch means to stay. And eventually, what happens is the judge comes up to examine your dog, and lo and behold, he's giving the dog, or she is giving the dog the stay command with every touch in the examination. After the examination is completed by the judge, and if I were training, I would move behind the dog as the judge would do, and I would say twice, call your dog, call your dog. And of course, this is to train so that you're not going to experience anticipation on the dog's part when he hears the judge giving that word or those words. When you leave your dog, make sure that your signal is distinct. Again, not flashy, not fancy, just make it smooth and deliberate. A good thing to remember when you're setting up for the exercise and the judge is about to give you the first command, which would be forward, remember you're only going to go forward 4 or 5 steps perhaps. And at that point, you're simply going to use the word stay, and you can give a signal at the same time. To demonstrate the moving stand, I'll simply walk forward and give the stand command as though I were training. Strut. Stay. I would then return to the dog, approach him from the front. In the United States, it's simply moving the hands back over the dog towards the rear of the dog, and that's the examination. In Canada, you might get an examination more like this. Now, one important point is, as I said before, I like to say, every time that I touch the dog, give him the word stay. 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 Then I step behind the dog and I say, call your dog. Call your dog. Then I return to the position, the handler's position in front of the dog. And in Canada, it's a recall followed by a finish. Come. Good guy. So, demonstrating the moving stand exercise, again I have, you can see behind my back, a flexi. I'm going to give a gentle tug when I give the hand signal. It's going to be on the 3rd step, the same way as in the signal exercise. I'm going to call stand your dog very quickly here because I don't have a lot of room, and I'll do it twice. Strut. Stand your dog. Stand your dog. Once he's out, I apply tension so that the opposition reflex will kick in. I want to make sure that he doesn't move. If he were to move a foot, I would go out and, for example, take that foot, place it back into position, and tell him to stay. Now, when I move forward, I'm going to approach from the front of the dog. Stay, 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 stay. Go back to the handler position and apply tension. In Canada, the next command is going to be for the dog to come to front, since we don't send directly to heel. Come. Yes. I normally train that finish just from a sit as I'm going to demonstrate. Stay. So the rod is down. Heel. Yes. The first time, like that. Heel. Stay. Again, I train with 3 reps. The second rep is going to be with me holding the rod about like this and just out to here. Heel. On the 3rd rep, I simply reach down, take the end of the rod, And I don't put the rod down at all. Stay. Heel. Heel. Well, that pretty well covers the signal exercise and the moving stand. Now, there's a lot of additional work that is required before you get to this level with your dog. For example, I did not show you how people will give the signal and stop their dog, sometimes holding a treat, or how some people will give the signal for the halt and pivot directly in front in order to prevent the dog from moving forward. I have assumed that you're all aware and familiar with the basic training that is required for this exercise. Well, as I said, that pretty much covers the signal exercise and the moving stand. So remember, have fun training your dog.